I think a lot of people tiptoe around just flat out saying like, hey, if you're teaching gunfighting, have you ever been shot at? Like, let's just go ahead and say that's one thing that you should probably, be able to answer to.
You could be the baddest motherfucker on paper and in your head, but when it comes down to getting shot at, you might be like, holy fuck, I don't like this.
Welcome to the Make Ready with the Experts podcast. I'm your host, Fernando Coelho. We're here at Panteo Studios bringing you the very best from in and around the firearms industry, covering topics like guns, gear, firearms training, self-defense, and so much more. Everything from industry insights about the latest gear and training techniques to hunting, survival, and empty hands. But this isn't just about the guns, folks. This is about the stories. Military, law enforcement, and civilian stories of heroics protecting our country, fellow citizens, friends, and neighbors.
Panteo.
Today's episode is from the Inside Story series of videos available on Make Ready TV. In this episode, The Warfighters, 3 Panteo firearms instructors sit down, discuss current and somewhat controversial topics based on questions and comments from our viewers. You may be asking, why is this episode called The Warfighters? Because each of these men have a special forces background, extensive combat experience, and are all firearms instructors. This makes their insights on what works and what doesn't invaluable to listeners like us. You will hear Kyle Harth.
My name is Kyle Harth. I'm a former Special Forces soldier and a current law enforcement officer and trainer.
Aaron Baruga.
Hi, I'm Aaron Baruga. I'm the founder of Guerrilla Approach. I'm a former Green Beret, and now I train law enforcement and situationally aware citizens on how to better defend themselves and employ purposeful tactics for self-defense.
And Robert Keller have a frank conversation at a popular bar in downtown Columbia, South Carolina.
I'm Bob Keller.
You could be the fastest shooter in the world and the most accurate shooter in the world. You don't have the balls to face your threat? What good is it?
You'll hear the chatter of local Columbia residents enjoying their libations in the background as these 3 guys share their insights and observations from everything from gunfighting to social media. We'd also like to extend a special thanks to the staff of Bourbon Columbia for their hospitality, as well as their special blend of Angel's Envy that helped smooth the way for this episode. And boy, did it.
They look pretty standard.
Hey, what can I get for you?
Oh, hey, how you doing? Whatever they're having. It's fine. What are you guys having?
Bourbon.
Yeah, bourbon, man.
Solid. I'm in. So anyway, these are the questions. It's, I guess some of them came directly from folks off social media. Some of them are like questions I guess they've been compiling for a while. They're pretty standard. I think we can work through them. So
social media, really legitimate questions then.
They're questions.
Yeah. Let's do it, man.
All right, first one, I guess. How do you weed through the real instructors sharing knowledge on the forums, social media, and YouTube versus the posers?
Wow, just getting right into it with the posers right out the bat.
I guess that means they think we're not posers.
All right, well, I guess we're in the in crowd.
I mean, it's a legit question. Social media gives everybody a voice. Unfortunately, those voices aren't always valid.
It's definitely democratized any transfer of knowledge, and I think that it's good and bad though. It's there's stuff on there that you can seek out and I think truly learn, but there's also this default towards outrage. Like people just want to yell at each other or argue over like the most low stake arguments.
Well, I think when they get controversial, they feel like it gives them like a louder voice or a more valid voice.
Yeah.
Not necessarily true.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess the real thing is if you don't know that person or you don't know the circle they operate in or what their experience level is, I mean, anybody can look good on the internet.
I mean, you're here, so I mean,
well, yeah.
that's proof.
No,
I
said look good on the internet. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that it was a natural reaction to kind of stale content. You know, social media allows everyone to kind of do their own thing, and you know, some people have interesting things to say, but they never had a platform before. But that doesn't make, everyone a subject matter expert, as we've
Right.
definitely seen too. And, Bob, someone like yourself has a lot of experience. How do you sift through?
Yeah, how do you make people on social
Shit,
media
coming at me
aware?
hard.
I mean, how do you make them aware of what your background is and what your skill set
I think the problem
is?
with the social media instructors or guys putting the stuff out there is, anytime you get on camera, you want to make yourself look cool, right? So they're coming up with content.
Go ahead.
What hair product?
They're coming up with content just to make themselves look cool on camera.
They
So
wanna
it's
be
not stuff
popular,
that makes sense. It's you want to be popular. You want to do stuff that wows the customer.
Well, and that's the thing is, if it looks sexy, it sells. So
Exactly.
so people are elevating things up to the point where they're actually not based in fundamentals, and they're not valuable anymore. They look great on camera.
Yeah.
It's cool, got
which
pictures.
is dangerous as hell because now these guys
Dangerous as hell,
they
yeah.
they get well known as good instructors out there. Well, then that's what guys are going out there. Other guys that are watching this stuff, they think that's the norm, and then start teaching that to all the general public. Well, that's scary shit. Because
think-
now people are freaking practicing on shit that they don't need to.
Yeah. I think it's something that we can see across the board with all culture in any industry is that we don't yet understand the effects that social media is having, because it does empower that amateur who maybe has something to say about a specific thing, but when you want to broaden his aperture and his voice, he maybe is, saying stuff outside of his lane. I mean, look at the fake news phenomena kind of a thing, where it's like stuff that is
What's fake news?
What's fake? Not anything I watch. You get content that is amplified because it's cool, not because it's credible, and this distorts the learning process. So, I know guys.
So that's what I was.
Yeah.
That's what I was hitting on exactly.
Like a lot of guys will ask you, hey, when do I do something cool? And you're like, bro, you're doing something cool right now. But their perception and their frame of reference is like, well, I'm not doing backflips in a course and shooting a gun. This isn't fucking cool, So it's finding that balance, and I think the biggest way you can determine it is, what is the guy's background who's teaching you? If I want to learn,
That's exactly where I was gonna go. Because you can't even. It sounds like we're bad mouthing or bashing all these guys. In reality, some of these guys think that what they're teaching works.
right.
The problem is they don't actually know
Whether it
what
works or not, and that's
So-
the thing. What's the validation? And I agree with you both. It's you got to figure out, is this person really got the knowledge base to teach this stuff?
Yeah.
There's stuff I don't teach, particularly and specifically because that's not my specialty. It's not what I do.
Yeah, well, you're smart then.
Well-
Most people don't do that.
And I don't have as much of a dog in the hunt. So I can kind of back off and say that. But it is, I understand the question. I get it. With everybody having the ability to be instantly famous because you can be on the internet.
yeah.
It is probably hard to weed them out, but I agree it's background, and it's experience level, and I guess you got to talk to other people. There's also, I would have to say that association,
Yeah.
the good instructors
Yeah.
or the solid base tends to associate with one another or should. Now as well as I do.
The A students hang out with A students, kind of a thing. Yeah.
They do, but now there's a lot of little infighting when that happens too. There's pokes and jabs, but there's a difference between pokes and jabs and fights.
Yeah. Well, like any academic, professors should be critiquing each other constantly, but not everyone is a professor, kind of a thing. And it's with social media, we've seen this allergy almost to even having a discussion about credentials, because so many guys will do different things. And it's I think a lot of people tiptoe around just flat out saying hey, if you're teaching gunfighting, have you ever been shot at? Let's just go ahead and say that's one thing that you should probably, be able to answer to.
Right.
Now, you can take that argument in a lot of different directions, but I think that's a good metric to use when measuring it against a guy's background. It's hey, are you opening your mouth and speculating about what's happening every single time you make a statement about, all right, when you're in a fight and you're doing this, whoa, let's back it up. Tell me about the fight you're in, because if you've never been scared before, if you've never been desperate, and you don't have the breadth of professional experience to understand how everything could fall apart, then credentials might matter, a little bit. Just a little
that's
bit.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that is it.
That's it exactly.
I got to admit, Kyle, Bob, and Aaron were all correct on this. Our industry has perpetuated both posers and the real deal, real people. You have real instructors that are out there that have legitimate backgrounds, meaning they've really been out there, they've really been in combat, or they really have been on the job as a police officer, dealing with domestics, dealing with other problems, actually having real world experience. You also have competitive shooters out there that are top-notch competitive shooters that have won state, national championships. All they do is practice, and they've become the best of what they do. And then you have the guys that are out there on social media, on Instagram, on YouTube. They will go to classes from top instructors, become professional students. Then they will go around and perpetuate techniques, show techniques as if they are the founder of these techniques, or they are now an instructor on the same par as these legitimate instructors. And unfortunately, when you're out there looking at Instagram or YouTube, it's kind of hard sometimes to tell the difference between the real guys and the posers. I mean, you can't always look at a DD-214 and say, okay, this guy really did do this stuff, or you really can't look at a person's background in law enforcement and say, is this guy for real or is he not? Or for the people that are out there that have zero background, but they're really good at watching videos and they're even better at creating videos.
If there's ever a problem, just walk out on the balcony here, or walk out, put that double-barrel shotgun and fire 2 blasts.
Unfortunately, when you're out there to learn, buyer beware. If you're watching videos on social media or on YouTube, just remember, see who that person is. Watch the video, do some due diligence, look them up or look her up and find out if they're the real deal. If not, you just wasted your time, but hey, move on to a real instructor. Now, coming up next, what kind of experience should an instructor have? Good topic to talk about. Here you go.
Somebody asked, what kind of experience should an instructor have to teach what they teach? You know, should a soldier teach concealed carry when that's not really his specialty? Or, you know, should a cop teach something that's outside of his specialty lane? And I think we were kind of touching on that anyway. It's like, and that's the problem is going back to that internet question about how do you vet an instructor. When we talked about experience, that makes a big difference. But it's also, you know, if you're going to be an instructor, to some point, you have to market yourself. Like, you have to build an audience and you have to have a teaching base. But I think we talked about it. It's staying in your lane of specialty. You know, Bob and I were having a conversation the other day at breakfast, and we were talking about climbing. I mean, off topic for tactics. We were talking about climbing. You know, absolutely not something that I specialize in. Not my specialty at all. Bob does it, but he relies on people that truly do it for a living. You know, we were talking about that whole culture. There's a complete culture of people that do that kind of thing. And I think teaching in the gun industry and instructing is all the same way as well. You've got people that specialize in certain things. And if people stay in their lane, I think they're good. I mean, we all know people that don't stay in their lane.
So climbing CQB, not in the future.
Yeah. I'm not going to take a lead climber and, you know, do dynamic vehicle work with them.
Climbing is kind of like the new CrossFit, so there might be a lot of money.
You know, actually, if we could get a shoe sponsor, you know, then probably people would take it serious.
Reebok, I'm a size 10 and a half. I'll just take it right now.
Saying.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things where I think, you know, the quality of your exposure and the depth of your experiences. So, you know, look at like a PhD student that writes their dissertation on a very specific thing in a field of study, like counterterrorism, you know, surgical strikes overseas. And now, could someone who writes a PhD or a dissertation about that speak about, you know, U.S. relations with Russia? Maybe not immediately, but they have the information base to understand how to research that stuff and build, you know, claims that can be supported with evidence. I think it's the same thing with training where, you know, hey, if you're a 20 years spec ops guy, you probably understand firearms a lot. Now, you might have a specific specialty. Now, how much that specialty overlaps with material is where you kind of start to develop those left and right limits. You know, like if you're a free fall guy and all of a sudden, you know, you get hit up by a department that's like, hey, can you teach us a scuba class? You're like, Yeah, like no, you probably shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah.
But that's the thing.
Somebody's gonna
yeah.
do
So
Well, that is the problem with, I guess, when you're looking at experience-wise or staying in your lane, going with someone who's, because you probably saw it, but both of you guys, training pre-9/11
Oh yeah.
to post-9/11, because we didn't know what would work, right? So I was one of them, and as a Ranger SF guy, I mean, we trained on some fucking weird ass shit.
Yeah.
Because that's what we thought, like
Yeah.
when it came down to
Yeah,
it, we'd be
this is
doing
the way
this,
it's
this, and
gonna
this.
happen.
Yeah, I mean, right?
And
And
then-
then after
but then
that,
reality.
when you're actually getting shot at, you're like,
Yeah.
none of that shit
Yeah, this don't
mattered.
work.
At least
This
the
don't
times
work
that I've
and
been
that
in
ain't
gunfights.
happening.
Right. So it's like, well, all right, I'll throw that out the door, or that's not gonna work. Well, I don't know if you guys bring that to the table when you're training as well, but that's.
Well, I mean-
I took all of my experiences, found out what actually did work, and was, and I was guilty too.
Yeah.
I trained on some weird ass shit, threw all that stuff out the window.
Well, I mean,
'Cause, I mean, some of the stuff probably pertains, because you never know. Any situation, it's always going to be different.
for sure.
So, I mean, you should know how to do everything. But I mean, the majority of the stuff, I mean, just for me, it came down to shooting.
Yeah. Well, it's tools.
So,
Isn't
but yeah, I mean, it was.
We all use that term.
It's
tools,
going back to like
Yeah.
the instructors on the internet. I don't blame those guys because they don't know, and they're trying to come up with things that are all right. What's going to make me faster? How is it going to be?
Yeah, it's like they have a very narrow frame of reference to where it is that danger of like you don't know how close you are to like running the razor's edge with like it's all about to fall apart, kind of a thing. Or if you put together too many complex techniques and one thing falls apart, and it's like now you're just completely screwed.
The whole machine comes
Yeah,
apart.
and you never learn how to play pickup basketball, which is what it oftentimes turns into. But yeah, I think that just because guns are very universal with a lot of tactical training, so a guy might think like, I've never done like a lot of CQB, but I did it once, and yeah, I could
And I'm a really good shooter.
Yeah, so I could totally do it.
probably awesome.
I've never actually
no,
served a
you're not
warrant
gonna be
or
awesome.
gone on a raid, but I could probably do it. And it's to be fair, I think a lot of those guys don't know how far they're bargaining outside their capabilities because they want to do business, they want to further their brand or whatever. And yeah, if you're ignorant, you don't know, kind of a thing. But now there's the internet to tell you that you are wrong. Always to tell you that you're wrong.
But to make you always feel like you're right.
Yeah. Which internet are you going on?
Yeah, depending on who's giving you feedback.
Very recently, I had the opportunity to talk to one of our instructors about this very same topic. We were sitting at the fire, having a bourbon and a cigar. We had just finished filming, and we were just unwinding and just going over the topics of the day. And the subject of instructors and their experience got brought up again. The instructor I was sitting with actually had an interesting perspective on this. He said, as long as these professional students that now become instructors, as long as they're teaching stuff that they're staying in their lane, meaning if they've never been in a gunfight, they're not teaching you about being in a gunfight. If they've never been on a domestic, they're not trying to teach you about that. If they've never fast roped into gunfire or into battle, they're not trying to teach you that. But instead, if these instructors are out there teaching you the fundamentals and getting you spooled up to handle the firearm properly, then they actually serve a very good purpose. And I tend to agree with him on that. There's not enough quality instructors out there teaching the fundamentals and teaching the basics. Oftentimes, the top instructors are too busy teaching, with merit, teaching the more advanced techniques, the more advanced subject matter. So you do need someone teaching the basics. But again, it's a matter of staying in your lane, at least for the instructors out there that are trying to be instructors. Next subject, mindset. Something that we seem to cover a lot in our instructional videos, and something that is very, very important. Without mindset, you're nowhere. Here we are.
In your experience, how important is mindset?
Well, that's a very relative. Yeah, what do we mean by that?
Right.
For what situation?
Yeah, I'm assuming they mean from a tactical perspective, you know, in a relative importance of gear, training, experience, persistence, attitude. Where does mindset fall into it? I say it's all encompassing.
Yeah.
I mean, I say that every aspect of what you do starts with a proper mindset, and I think good instructors train to that point. I think they make you try to understand the purpose behind or why, so that you have it right.
Everyone's mindset's gonna have to be different.
Agreed.
And you might think you have the right mindset going into a gunfight if you've never been in one, and it could be totally off when you know what I'm saying? Because no one knows how they're gonna react until the bullets fly by their face. So I mean, you could have the best mindset in the world, or you could be prepared, think you are. You could be the baddest motherfucker on paper and in your head, but when it comes down to getting shot at, you might be like, holy fuck, I don't like this.
Right.
So mindset is.
Does anybody like it?
Mindset is huge.
I get really pissed off when people shoot me.
Yeah, mindset is huge, but is it going to work for everyone?
Well, so does it benefit you in training though? So having proper mindset. So I'll take it. They didn't emphasize it, but I'll take it to a different place.
In a stressful situation.
Right.
I use it a lot to help guys look past, you know, getting sucked in on a certain task. So like with pistol work, everyone wants to be the quickest out of the holster, quickest hand speed for reloads. It's like, yeah, that stuff's, you need to understand it, but like, let's look past it to, you know, a mindset kind of aperture, as opposed to just narrowing in on these specific tasks. Like, well, how does that task apply to whatever your mission set is? Okay, now let's work backwards from there to actually prepare your mind for success, rather than chasing these different, you know, metrics that might have nothing really to do with how you'll react in that real situation.
Well, I think if you're talking training-wise, like getting in the proper mindset, I think you guys have had to have seen this, like or felt it. 'Cause I know I every once in a while catch myself doing it. Is looking at the paper targets as paper targets.
Yep.
That's a good mindset for training. You know, it doesn't totally relate to getting shot at, but it'll help you when the time comes. So having the right mindset of looking at a paper target and thinking that is really a threat.
Right.
I think is huge.
It is.
Like and I'm guilty of it myself. Sometimes I'll be shooting at the fucker and I know it's not shooting back at me, so I'm like, like the range-itis shit.
You get caught up in the drill. Yeah. It's like now I'm training the drill instead of training the situation that the drill addresses.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that plays into the mindset if you're bringing it to the range and getting ready for a stressful situation.
It's like focus too. Like if you're gonna, you know, be the primary jump master for a jump, you know, your mindset helps you go through a sequence of events mentally to prepare you for what you're doing, which is, you know, kicking dudes out of a bird.
Right. Am I the primary? Am I the AJ? Am I the safety? What are my duties and responsibilities?
You have to look at
where am I moving in the
everything
aircraft?
as opposed to like, you can't just focus in on one thing, which, you know, like on the range, like you said, like we'll get caught up on focusing in on one thing when in reality it should be everything as a whole and then what it actually applies to.
Yes. Which that's mindset.
Again, the videos we film, more often than not, there's a chapter on mindset, or the instructor is going to talk about something related to mindset. And it's one of the key fundamentals. It's one of the key things you need to have. So if you're watching our videos, go to the chapters on mindset. In fact, we have a section on skill set that's devoted to mindset. And there's 2 full videos of tons of chapters from different instructors that cover mindset. You need to check that out at makeready.tv. Now, the next topic, range-itis, or stress shooting. You know what that is. You get to the range, you're relaxed, you're shooting, putting rounds down to the target, you're just chilling out, beautiful day, or it may be raining, but you're totally relaxed. Your heart rate's not going crazy, you're not pumped up, you're in the flat range. Let's hear what the guys have to say about it.
Somebody asked, does stress shooting really work, or is it all show? So
I'll probably piss people off on that one.
Well, but I mean,
and you guys too.
No, legitimate question. You know, it's like you said, you get into that range-itis. You get into that range mentality. There's no stress on the range. Now you can add stress by adding time requirements, accuracy requirements, all of those things that make the range more stressful, but that's not real stress. It's a type of it's a type
Physical
of
versus
stress.
mental.
Right. Exactly.
Physical versus mental.
And
the hardest thing.
in all honesty, you really need to mimic both.
So, you guys, how do you guys feel on the stress? Trying to create stress by running around, throwing weights all over the place, and getting the heart rate up. Do you think that induces the correct stress for
Less is more.
for a real situation?
Less is more, I think, with the physical stuff. So, I think that there is a misunderstanding that a lot of shooters have. That is, if I get my heart rate, if I do, 100 burpees, then I go shoot a gun. That was awesome stress-induced training. It's like, well, did you want to?
Yeah, I totally disagree.
Yeah. Well, it's like, are you trying to? Yeah, I don't agree with that either. Are you trying to smoke yourself? Yeah.
If I'm driving a vehicle and I start getting shot at, I don't have any physical stress. I've got a ton of mental stress.
Right. So people that do that, if you're doing it physical stress, then I agree. Like that, well, I don't agree because I haven't seen it on target myself.
You didn't do burpees the first time?
Well, we
You got
did.
an
Hell
RPG?
yeah, we did. I did all that shit. I did all that stuff. Pre 9/11.
You fast rope in, you do your burpees.
Yeah. So
you
I don't
breach.
think, but
Breaching
if that's what instructors are doing it for,
Right.
Like physical stress, then I would
have to create a stressor.
I wouldn't say bullshit on it.
You have to
But
understand how you perform in an elevated heart rate.
creating mental stress by doing burpees and throwing weights,
Or like-
it ain't the same.
Dudes that
Agreed.
like duct tape their hands together, like you never know when your hands gonna be shot off, bro. Like we're looking at this the wrong way.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
let's backpedal here.
Let's not train for getting shot our
Yeah.
hands off. Yeah, this is not
It's okay. So guys focus too much on the physical aspect, and it's like you need to understand what it's like to shoot with an elevated heart rate. Absolutely. But the mental stress is more important because the speed of a tactical engagement is very different than
and it has ebbs and flows.
Yeah. So I think that, we get so caught up in, again, like, the harder is better kind of a thing. It's like, man, we ran a 2-miler with our gas masks on, then we qualled. Like, okay, but like, what was the learning objective? They're like, what did you?
Well, but see, I
it to
did
suck?
shit like that too. But it was all pre 9/11 stuff that we thought.
Right.
All that hard ass shit, like you're saying, harder, and not smarter.
Yeah, hard Rangers, not smart Rangers.
But that's what we thought was gonna fucking get us through battle. And then when it came down to it, all that shit. So yeah, now if you see people doing it, I'd be like, you guys are some, you're doing the wrong, you're doing the wrong thing.
Well, it's like the first time you get exposed to it, you kind of like, all right, check the box, and you're like, all right, this is what it's like, my hand movements might slow down. But if you're relying on that specifically, like it might be improperly patterning you for the mental component, which you can accomplish through like, blind shoots or force on force. Truly, I hate to say like problem solving because that's such a misnomer a lot of times with
Which is a huge aspect of shooting, but it has nothing to do with shooting.
Tactical problems are huge
yeah.
mindset problems.
Yeah.
They're huge, mental problems as you're working through. It's a tactical chess game.
Yeah.
And so you're working through it, and it's that next move.
I think that if you're a decent shooter, physical stress shouldn't really be that big of a hindrance because you understand how to control it. You understand how to control
If
your
you're also in
breathing.
decent physical condition.
Yeah, if you're also,
Right.
and assuming you need to shoot.
But I think if you're a badass shooter, it's gonna be less mental stress as well because you're gonna win.
Well, competitive shooters. So here's a question: does competitive
But then
shooting?
that goes into can you get shot at?
Right. So does competitive shooting mimic some of those mental and physical stressors that you would train for in a combat scenario? You're shooting under time, you're shooting for accuracy, you're competing, and some of those shooting events require physical movement.
I have some pretty fat guys that are amazing competitive shooters. I get smoked by some dudes in USPSA that are ginormous.
I know some one-legged dudes that can smoke me in competition on any day.
I think it's great.
So too, no.
But you could be the number one in the world, and when it came down to getting shot at, you might
seize up.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
I think it's good that, the tactical community has gotten away from the narrative of, competition will get you killed. Like, okay, we've gotten away from that to see that there are benefits. Sure. But I've also seen with the popularity of competitive shooting, some tactical shooters actually start to like veer towards the bad sides of it. Examples would be like a holster configuration, just like level 1 retention. It's like, hey, there's not all holsters are made the same kind of a thing. If that thing flops out on the ground, when it needs to be up against your hip because you're like running over walls.
Or you catch it on every doorway.
Yeah.
Or you get into a situation where you go hands-on with somebody and you've got this thing, protrusion.
It's, I think, good for a measure of mechanics, but if you're improperly...
Well, if you're going to do it, I think they're great, because I think where you're going with it with kit-wise, totally agree with you. Like, you got to do the stock class. You know, use what you use what you be using. I think
practical, tactical, or whatever the.
Well, I think you can do. I think it's called stock class.
I think there's some benefits there.
As long as you're using the stuff that you'd be using.
Right.
You know how you. If you're a day-to-day carry guy, well, when you're doing those competitions, you should be doing it.
You should be doing it from how you carry. Agreed.
Our streaming video subscribers of MakeReady.tv will now get exclusive access to the video versions of our podcasts. In addition, subscribers will have access to our episodes before they air on iTunes or any other free platform. Be sure to visit MakeReady.tv and subscribe today to stream our exclusive content to any device, anywhere, anytime. I'd like to give a shout out to our sponsor, Walther Arms. Now, I gotta admit, I'm a 1911 guy. Always have been, probably always will be. But when I tried out their PPQ pistol, dude, that's a nice gun. Then the Q5 pistol, the steel frame, oh, now you're talking. And that trigger, oh man. Then, add insult to injury, after I started getting used to the Q5, they come out with the Q4 steel frame. Had a chance to try that one out when I was in Germany at their factory before it was released, and holy shit, I really liked it. And now, I can't put it down. So, special thanks to Walther. Thank you for making life a little difficult for me and my wallet, but thank you for being a supporter. And for those of you out there that want to save 20% off their apparel, use code MAKEREADY at their website at shop.waltherarms.com. Some valuable insight there, and it makes you think. If you're going to be at the range, and I've seen guys do this at our range facility, they'll have their gun holstered and they'll get the heart rate going. They'll do some running to and from the target first. Obviously, there's no one else shooting. They'll run to and from the target, or they'll run around the bay, get the heart rate up, and then they'll get the timer out and they'll engage targets. And you'll see that you just don't do as well as if you were just standing there engaging targets without that additional stress. So, next topic now, and this actually goes back to instructors teaching based on their experience. What have you learned from gunfighting? So this goes back to, what have you learned from actually being involved in it, and what are the takeaways? This is important. Here we go.
So let's see. Next question. This one is a direct question too from somebody on Instagram. What was the most profound thing you learned about gunfighting, whether in real world or in training? It's actually good.
So half of that question already disqualifies itself.
Yeah,
because you learn about it in the real world, not in training.
Is that you or me?
That's you.
Awesome, thanks.
That's your local trial.
Wait a minute. Say it again.
I'm gonna wait on you guys. So what is the most profound thing you've learned about gunfighting, whether in real world or in training? Most profound thing.
To me, absolutely, from, I guess, going back to one of the prior questions, pre 9/11, post 9/11. I mean, from what I've learned, it is absolutely the basics.
Agreed.
That freaking come into play, or what's the most profound thing I learned from actually doing it compared to training was that it's everything came down to the basic fundamentals.
Mm-hmm. I think probably one of the most profound experiences I had was a gunfight we had. We had a forward element. They got ambushed. They actually initiated with a claymore and then had a horrible firefight they had to displace from. But the rest of the camp got attacked as well. and we were a really small element. And tents got shot up, tires got shot up, just hundreds and hundreds of rounds of PK ammo got poured into our camp from higher positions before we were able to displace those machine gun positions. But nobody got hit. All this equipment had bullet holes all through it, 5 Humvee tires down, all this stuff. And it made me realize that I don't care how fast you can shoot, and I don't care if you have a fantastic position of opportunity or a definitive place where you can pour gunfire down on somebody. If you don't do accuracy, back to fundamentals, what does it matter? If you don't hit what you're shooting at, I don't care how many times you can shoot or how fast you can shoot. And I took that lesson.
You might get lucky, but
you might get lucky, but your enemy might get lucky as well. In that situation, all of us in the camp, the good guys, well, in my perspective, the good guys, probably not in their perspective.
Freedom isn't free.
Yeah. But we were all lucky. But we were lucky because they lacked the proper skill set to put rounds on target.
They're shooting like this.
Right.
That's not how you do it?
Yeah.
No.
Well, sometimes. So I the most important thing I took about that is it's accuracy. It all boils down to accuracy. Mm-hmm. Can you put a round on target? Because if you can't, and that's all basics and mechanics. That has nothing to do with being cool. That has nothing to do with how much gear you have. That is basic fundamentals of shooting. Sight picture, trigger squeeze, sight alignment.
And like you said, it's all the basics, and guys don't want to accept that because, it's a very simple approach. It's all this other stuff that we add in there to jazz up training or to spice it up. There might be a time and place.
Yeah, what do you do when you actually stop behind cover or stop to engage? What does it come down to?
Yeah.
Shooting fundamentals. Exactly. So everything leading up to the shot, you have to be in shape. Yes, you have to be an athlete to get over things and around things. When it comes down to shooting, you're usually not doing all those activities when it comes down to the shot. So you still, from the start, you need to learn how to shoot first and then do all the other stuff after that.
And maybe that's the lesson, is that it's a building block. You can't do, and we used to teach this all the time, a complex task is nothing more than a combination of very simple tasks. Mm-hmm. So if you don't have that base, the simple task base, you can't stack those blocks on top of each other and get to that culmination point where you have that complex task. And I think people miss those basic steps, and they miss those basic blocks trying to get to, because
they want to do the cool stuff.
Right.
They want to immediately go into all the running and gunning stuff.
Right. Yeah. Right. And that's all great, but none of us started there. Whether you end up there or not is a different story, but if you'll never get there without those basics.
I can't remember what the question was, but it goes. I get it.
I
get it if you're going into instruction-wise and someone wants to take a 2-day course. Some people just want to take it. They don't care about getting better. They're taking it because that's their vacation, right?
Right.
It's their So I get that. They want to have a cool experience. Sure. They want 2 days of just freaking blazing away. But guys that are actually going to courses that want to save their life,
right,
none of that shit matters. Right. Learn how to shoot first and then start doing the cool stuff after that.
I think that, it all falls back on those simple tasks, like you said. You have to be able to understand what the complex task is. So if you're in an engagement, recognizing okay, what is this, harassment fire? Is this an ambush line kicking off? Is this something else that's trying to bait me into something else? So it's having that patience and that clarity to actually see what's happening and then make a decision versus we're shooting, I get to shoot my gun finally, hell yeah, man.
With shooting all 30 rounds.
Yeah, I'm shooting. Guys, I'm black on ammo.
Finally have a chance. I'm gonna lighten my load.
Yeah. But I think that something I found profound, I guess, based off the question is how everyone falls back on whatever the most common mechanic is. So it's if it's a break contact exercise, hey, we all recognize through proper training, we're outgunned right now. We need to get to a better piece of terrain to where we can, maybe assess the situation, see if we're going to just get out here completely, call an error or whatever, or get a maneuver element going. But have everyone kind of, it's not this, your first tick isn't this grand action sequence. It's really more so okay, it's happening. okay, we did our thing, now it's over. And there's, you make sense of it later, but during it, you kind of fall back on whatever those skill sets are.
Well,
the
you fall back on your
basics,
base.
which are not sexy.
Which is, and the huge part about that, at least for when I train people, and that's, you want it so simple that, because not many people have no shit been in a stressful situation.
True.
Mm-hmm. And when it goes down, you want everything just to go into frickin' auto mode.
Yeah.
So, and that's learning the basics to a T. To when a stressful situation comes off and your mind's not thinking about anything, it just happens.
Right.
Well, the more complex you bring in, like the different mag changes or the frickin' different stances or the different grips. Well, if you have to think about all that in a stressful situation,
Not happening.
Then you're not thinking about
it's gonna screw you, right?
Situation.
So.
I think that when you look at the unit as a whole that you're with, whether it's a platoon or ODA or a cell or whatever, being able to fall back on those basics also makes it easier for the person in the leadership position to actually do their job, because that's who's going to be calling the shots a lot. So it's good for them to be able to rely on, hey, my shooter's not thinking about like, what kind of reload is the best? He's just getting the job done, And then he's seeing things probably in a similar way that I am, and then I can, coordinate whatever I need to with resources and personnel to make a decision to get us out of there. So it's, it carries up the chain, if you will, with regards to how you actually perform out there, instead of being distracted by like, I trained to get my reloads down to a sub 1 second, but that didn't really matter in the battlefield because you need to be able to maneuver and communicate kind of.
That just means you're going to run out of ammo.
That just means you're going to run. This 222 drill is really not working so great in the real world. It's a great marksmanship drill. I love it though.
Oh yeah, that goes into one that's not, I'm sure, not on the list. But how do you guys? Because I'm sure you were all taught it, because I was too. Doing like multiple targets, multiple shots.
Yeah.
Did you ever taught the rhythm drill?
Yeah.
Like boom, 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 boom.
Cadence of fire.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Have you ever done cadence of fire when someone's really shooting at you?
You've never gone into a room and there's not been 5 guys there for
And you
to
went boom,
shoot?
boom, boom, boom. Well, I mean,
So one time we made an entry,
That was
and
just
as we
like
did it, the
one
bad
question that
guy
I
hit a
got.
metronome.
Yeah.
So that we could have, the right cadence as we shot.
Exactly.
Yeah, it was perfect.
I mean, I was one, like, before I knew any better,
Right.
that was stuff that I was taught too. And then now that I teach, I'm like, and the experiences that I have, it's like, holy, who's teaching that? I just want, so I mean, you guys aren't teaching that, right?
You want to go back in your memory and say,
Holy crap.
if I could just remember the guy that told me to do
When
that.
multiple people are shooting at you, there is no boom, boom,
No.
boom, boom.
The rhythm is how fast can I shoot these people that are shooting at me.
Consistent, accurate rounds.
Right.
And I guess when you look at those are training scars. We see them in ourselves. We see them in students. You look at training scars, and they're all built on unrealistic principles that you use for training. And if you don't alter those principles, you get stuck in that set.
Trained by people that had never been there, and and it's not their
Drop
fault.
the mic. Drop.
It's not their fault.
Yeah, no,
they were teaching stuff that they thought would work.
Well, okay, and here's the other thing. How many instructors, and I include ourselves when I look at this, how many instructors have very, very definitive things that they teach that are yours and yours only? You came up with them all on your own based on no experience or no teaching from anybody else. None of us.
I invented the sit-up. What are you talking
Yeah, right.
about? Yeah. I invented the sit-up and the push-up.
Any course I go to, I don't care if the guy's an absolute jackass. I'll probably still walk out of there learning something. Like, oh, I never thought of that. And I can take that into, something that I do teach. I mean, shoot, I get it from students even. A student sometimes will bring something up like that I had never thought about. Yeah, damn it.
Damn, that's a good idea.
Nothing is beneath me to where like if it works and it makes sense, I'll be the first one to be like, that's badass. I'm gonna start teaching that.
Happens to me all the time. I used to tell students, I learn more standing up on the catwalk in a shoot house, watching students shoot, than I learned from being in that room shooting. I'll give you an example. We were doing a night vision drill for a SWAT team.
So you pay attention, you mean?
Yeah, well, I actually.
You're not on your phone on the
Well, I
catwalk?
gotta pay attention because I don't want to get shot off the catwalk in case somebody's high carrying. So So we're up on the catwalk. We're doing a night vision drill. The drill is you enter a room, and I've got a bad guy. It's a simunition drill. I've got a bad guy who's going to shine a very bright flashlight at you while you're under nods, and it's to see how you react to it. He drops the flashlight and leaves the room. Now you've got to eliminate that light source to not screw with your night vision, and you got to move to the next room and figure out where the bad guy's gone to in the house. I watched team after team after team. We were doing it in little 2-man teams. And I watched these guys flow through the house, and guys are trying to pick up the flashlight and figure out how to turn it off, and some guys are sticking it in their pocket, and then it's just illuminating through their pocket, but everybody's screwing with this damn flashlight.
Yeah.
A 2-man team came through, and the guy reached down, picked the flashlight up, set it bezel down, and walked on.
Having that clarity of mind to slow down and like think for a second.
And I'm like, absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
You don't know that flashlight, you don't know where the on-off switch is, you just know you need to eliminate the light source.
Who is that guy? Let's get him on here.
Yeah. He didn't throw it into the next room so that he could illuminate it or the FBI technique.
Actually, he taped it to his AK, spun and shot.
Yeah.
But again, so you see those simplistic things, and you see those. I learned as much from students as they ever learn from me, I'm sure.
Well, you're an idiot if you don't.
Right. Well, and it's that constant learning process. Mm-hmm. If you're not learning, you're falling behind because we're in an ever-changing world. Yeah. Regardless of what discipline you look at, I don't care what your passion is. If you're not learning more about it, you're becoming archaic. So.
I like what Kyle said. It's true. We're always learning. In fact, we should always be evolving and being in a state of learning. If you're not learning, you're not growing. Very, very valid. Next, gear on a budget. We could all relate to that. You want those 5 pieces of kit, you can afford one. So are you going to turn around and buy a bunch of shit and try to get it all? Or are you going to buy that one thing and put the money into it? Let's hear it.
This one I actually like. This one I don't think it gives us a room for opinions, but it doesn't cause arguments as much as some of the other ones.
No, but people like that. Trump's in office.
Yeah, that's
man.
true. That's
Trump's
true.
in office.
That's right. It's good now.
Yeah.
We're all good. What's the minimum gear you would buy on a budget? That's actually a really good question.
Gun and
so
sight.
people want to do this. I agree completely. I would add backups.
Yeah.
I see too many people invest in.
Depends on how far down the road.
Right. Are you into the
How much money you have?
Yeah. Wait, define budget.
I don't want to go irons like straight up.
Can you give me a monetary value on this budget? Because my budget may be different.
Yeah,
but no,
that's a good question.
People always consider that.
Small. Yeah.
People work hard. People work hard for their money. They want to get the maximum value tactically out of what they're getting, but it's performance over the long haul. You know, if you have to replace something all the time, but you replace it with cheap shit all the time, you've still spent the same amount of money you would spend on something quality. I'm a huge proponent of a quality optic on an AR. On all my AR platforms, I have a quality optic. I use aim points. I put T1s on most of my stuff, but I've got other very myriad of stuff.
Plug in there.
Well, no, it's just what I use.
Yeah.
It's I use what I use. I'm in no way affiliated with it, but But I carry backup iron sights on everything.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I carry an optic that I think is very reliable, very robust. It's gonna survive the things I've put it through, and it has survived the things I've put it through. But it is an electronic device that I'm putting on a weapon system that creates high recoil and that I'm gonna put through harsh environments. Yeah. It can fail. I shoot with my iron sights up, and I shoot with my optic on. I'm always ingraining that thing. So if I was going to say anything to anybody about what you should invest in, it would be a quality carbine and a quality optic with backup sights.
That's it. Yep.
Because and I go back to, and I understand like some of the people that watch this may think about, well, I don't shoot a carbine, I shoot a pistol. Okay, man, that's cool, but a pistol to me is a secondary. It's a backup. My primary is my rifle. So I focus my energy there, because if I've had to lose the rifle, I'm going to a different world. I'm not in my comfort zone as much as I was before.
I'm sure you feel the same.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to piss off the pistol people.
Neither do I.
But I mean,
pistols are viable in certain situations, and they're viable for some people who are relegated to a pistol.
Right.
They can't carry a rifle. I get it.
Right. I mean,
But we lived in a world and operated in a world and learned in a world where you had a primary and a secondary. And we focus so much on our primary. I still do that. Because you are what you know. You are what you know.
Well,
experience.
how many guys do you know have actually had to like transfer to their secondary in a fight? Like you probably on one hand count all of them. Now, does that mean you dismiss it as a skill set you need to train for?
Absolutely not.
No, but it frames your reference for like, okay, what's the more important thing? I only know like 2 guys have ever actually done that, and
it's more than me.
Yeah. I know something more than Bob. You saw it on the internet.
All right, he admitted it too.
I only know them. It wasn't me. Like I only,
That's true. It wasn't me. I just know him. It was a friend.
But it's like any hobby that guys take on, where it's like you don't want to commit the fallacy of buying all the equipment up front. Like when I first got into scuba diving,
they do though.
Well, yeah. Oh, I've been guilty of it.
And some people have the financial means to do so. But if you're on a budget and you got to,
I'm all about it.
Me too.
If you have the budget,
buy
whatever you want, but buy the best shit. If you don't have the money, well then spend it on carbine and spend it on your frickin' sight.
Agreed.
And then if once you get the money, buy the other stuff that you want. But
then arguably
don't skimp on the carbine. Don't skimp on the sight, so you can have the cool sling, the cool G Money grip, the cool. I don't even know. I'm not a gear guy, so I don't even know what's out there.
Bob Keller, multiple raids and hits, does not care about gear.
Tactical shooting.
As long as the gun works.
Tactical shooting has the most accessorized ability of anything else.
Yeah.
I mean, you can say, I gotta have this and I gotta have that.
Too many people want all of it, so they skimp on the important stuff so they can buy all of it.
Some of these upgrades are like upgrading a Honda Civic, basically, where it's like, how sexy can you make this thing, Or I see that with a lot of like polymer guns or even just like carbines. Yeah, it's just like how much can you guys do to this before the increases are marginal. It's like, well, how much money are you going to sink into this until it's just diminishing returns?
Maybe that's a decision point. Is it, make your investments based on performance. Mm-hmm. Are you increasing the performance ability of you or that weapon system?
If it is,
then maybe it's a viable expense.
I think just for that question, if it comes down to like bare minimum, what should I buy?
Right.
Yeah. Any gun
from Gamut Resolutions.
Any gun that works and is reliable.
Yeah.
And any sight that works and that is reliable.
Do your homework.
Yeah. There's lots of opinions out there for sure.
It goes down to the.
It really does. It really does.
It doesn't have to be carbine. But.
On pistols, I would say major caliber. And by major caliber, like police departments I work with, they say, you can carry any pistol, but it has to be a major caliber, 9 and up.
Not BB gun?
I think it's...
who's carrying 22s?
For tactical work, I don't think so, but for personal carry or protective carry, a lot of people might carry something smaller. Based on how do you carry, what's your situation? If I'm in shorts and no shirt all the time, can I really carry a full-size pistol? Probably not.
And there you have it on gear. I gotta admit, that is something we see all the time in classes and on the range. Guys showing up with stuff that they really can't afford. They saved up. They finally got that one piece of gear or that one optic or whatever it is, and that, more power to them. That's great. Then you have the guys that will show up with a bunch of different pieces of gear, very inexpensive stuff. It could be a really cheap optic, cheap mounts, and then all of a sudden you realize you just set yourself back for a bunch of money, and the shit don't work. Reminds me of the guy that was at our range shooting a 50 cal, and he just could not get on paper. Couldn't figure out why. Maybe it was the $50 scope and the $10 rings. Just saying. Anyway, next topic. What has changed or evolved in training? It's a good question. what was taught years ago, is that still valid today? Let's hear it.
Is there a popular technique or tactic you still see taught that you believe to be ineffective in a real force-on-force engagement?
Well, yes.
It's funny, we actually...
We already hit on it. So
we've talked about
So
it.
mine would be absolutely the one where they teach multiple shot, multiple targets.
Right.
The rhythm drill.
In rhythm.
Doesn't happen.
You're absolutely not going to shoot in a cadence.
Doesn't happen in real life.
I understand cadence drills. It's so that you start at a pattern and you start to close your pattern down and you speed up your shooting.
Yeah.
That's fine. It's a
problem-
method to speed up. But if you use it as a if you're training tool, sure.
If you train on that way,
Right.
and that becomes your train response or your muscle memory, well,
Right.
guess what takes over in a stressful situation?
Back to the basics, back to your muscle
Well,
memory.
muscle
What
memory
you know.
takes over.
Yeah.
So if you're
'Cause you've
used
got
to
that
doing
many
boom, boom,
repetitions.
boom, 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 fast, well, that's what you're gonna do. What happens if boom, boom didn't work on that one guy?
Right.
And you need to go boom, boom, boom,
Well,
boom,
the
boom.
second guy moves.
Yeah. So it doesn't. So that,
People
so
move in a
for me,
gunfight?
that's the biggest one that I can come up with. I don't know about you guys.
No, I mean I agree with that. one.
I could come up with other ones, I'm sure. but you
I
guys-
think the guys that are teaching to only load your pistol to one round so that you immediately have to do a reload as quick as you can, that's like never going to work in a
No,
gunfight.
dummy rounds.
Yeah, that
Introduce dummy rounds.
No, it's getting sucked into stuff that, like we said, doesn't. On the broad scope of things, doesn't have as much of an impact. So, like with a lot of the stuff I do around the vehicle is like I have to remind students, like, hey, the first time you shoot at someone, they're going to move. So the purpose of the way we're doing this exercise is so that maybe you learn a movement mechanic to get from this piece of terrain to the next piece of terrain. Understanding that, if you know where all the targets are, like that's screwing you. It's,
Wouldn't that be awesome in a perfect
Yeah.
world if we knew where all our threats are going to come from?
That's like the biggest thing is like, hey, unless you know exactly, unless it's a real close encounter, it's kind of hard to tell where it's coming from immediately, and you have to figure it out.
I mean, there are things you have to stage on a
can't get
range
around it.
scenario. You can't get around it, but there it goes back to what we were talking about, the mindset. As long as you can put yourself in that situation, these are threats. Like these paper targets are holy shit. They're, for one, moving, and two, they're shooting back at you. You can use those training scenarios on the range to your advantage, but yeah, exactly. They're never going to be
Standing
set
still,
up. Yeah, I
right.
mean, so you have to do that for training on a range, but if you have the right mindset, you can make it work for you.
So bad guys don't always have blue triangles, red circles, and yellow diamonds on them.
Man, you want to get
And
in
you
the
can shoot them
targets?
in order.
Yeah, I know. I'll
That's a
piss
whole-
some people off on that
whole
one
other
too.
thing. But you have to have those tools to work with. I think one of my biggest things I see in training is on repetitions of up drills. It's shoot what's called and then go back to ready.
Yeah. The fight
Shoot what's called, go back
It
and
starts,
ready.
it ends.
Exactly.
Starts, it
and
ends.
it never starts and ends like that. And I do a lot of stuff on post-shot protocol, evaluating what your rounds actually did. And there's a lot of people that don't teach that. They sit and do up drills, up drills, up drills, up drills, up
Bring
drills.
it up, boom, boom, and then
down,
automatically
up,
comes
up,
down.
Right.
Or with the holster, they come out of the holster, they take their 2 shots or 5 shots, and
Decock back to the
right when
holster.
that last shot cracks off, right back to the holster.
Yeah. Right.
And I'm guilty of it.
And that's a training score.
oh yeah, I'll make
And
myself
that's-
do push-ups.
And that one will get you hurt.
If I'm shooting by myself and I do it,
Yeah.
because I mean it
It's-
happens when you start shooting fast. Usually your reaction is because everything else going to the target's fast. Well, guess what else is fast? You going back to the holster.
Right.
And if that's
I got to get back ready for the next one. Well, no, you need to stay ready because you're in a fight.
Gotta reacquire
It's a
the
gun
target.
fight.
Yeah.
Something I see specifically is guys when they shoot underneath vehicles, they don't understand hey, there's certain circumstances that determine whether or not you do that. So, if it's out of just complete disparity, like, hey, the threat's closing in on you, you ain't got no other options because if you peek up your head over the top of the engine block or the trunk or whatever, you can get smoked. Yeah, you got to shoot underneath.
Or you can't move somewhere.
Yeah, if you're fixed to a location from superior firepower. But guys don't understand that, and they'll think like, I've got a tactical advantage. And it's like, well, no, actually, if you roll over onto your side, your situational awareness goes away. Your field of fire narrow down a lot.
Your world went to here.
So if someone sees you go to get in that position, they're like, oh, I'm just going to move off to the flank, and then they won't your shot's gone and now you're being maneuvered on. So that's something I see guys do a lot because it looks purposeful and cool, where as soon as I grab my next vehicle's terrain, I'm going to roll over onto my start and start shooting. It's like,
because I learned to do it.
Yeah, it's like, well,
this new toy I got.
Like, yeah, you need to understand like what's actually happening in the environment with the enemy, and
That's the most important thing.
And that's
any
situational
situation.
awareness.
Yeah.
I mean, the biggest weapon we have is our brain. You remove your brain from the fight. I don't care what your skill set is. You got to be thinking through the problem set. And it's like we talked about, it's a mental chess game. It's a tactical chess game. You're playing it.
100%.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can really be hard to determine what is a technique that you're taught or a drill that you're taught that really is of no merit anymore, or maybe should be modified or replaced to what is now the latest, greatest. I mean, sometimes, we always like to say, at least here at Panteo, we say this often, you only have 2 arms and 2 legs. There's only so many ways you can change something up. Unless we sprout a 3rd arm or a 3rd leg or some other appendage where techniques are going to have to evolve and change. Are we evolving for the sake of evolving just so that we can call it something cool or brand it ourselves, like some instructors out there do? They'll throw a cool name at something and call it their own, where it's been done for years already, just under a different acronym or different name. Yes, there are times where a technique needs to evolve, needs to change based on the circumstances of the environment, based on the engagement that you're going to be having with the enemy. But it's just interesting. Are we changing stuff for the better, or just to have something new because we don't want to have that old anymore? Something to think about. Which now brings us to the next question. Instructors that seem to stick around and those that fade away. Here it is.
All right, last one. Last one. All right, this is actually another direct question from a viewer. So, interesting one. It's kind of a good one to end on. Why do some instructors fade away while a few stay out there and relevant for years?
Man, you know my answer.
Actually, my answer is in that question, but so we do work in a world that has a lot of folks, whether they're valid, whether they're charlatans on the complete other end of the spectrum, or whether they're somewhere in the middle and they're staying in their lane. Why do some of them have a persistent influence on the community that we operate in, and why do some of them just flash in the pan?
Say it, Bob. Go ahead and say it.
Well, yeah, for me, what's never going to go away, which my business and everything I teach goes back to basics and fundamentals. That'll never change.
Right.
But for you, you're big on the vehicle stuff, that'll never change. There's always going to be vehicles, where is that ever going to stop?
Self-driving
cars. It's never going to stop.
You're going to teach
You're going to teach robots
relevant
get out of computer-operated cars and get into gunfights.
But relevant stuff.
Agreed.
Yeah,
and I think that's the key, and that's why I said I think the answer's in the question. It says, while a few stay out there relevant for years, it's relevancy. And basics keep you relevant, and I think that's a subject that's missed. Everybody wants to do sexy, but the basics.
And sexy. Some of the sexy stuff that leads up to the basics is not gonna work in every situation.
Right.
But being able to shoot the basic fundamentals of the carbine or the pistol will never change.
And I think the industry's seen,
no matter what situation you're in.
Until the carbine is replaced by a superior.
Where we're doing this, on the
and then we're all going to look for something different to do for a living.
I think that is absolutely.
I think so as well. I think that
guys that are teaching the latest and greatest stuff that don't
build it on the basics.
They don't transfer to every situation. Well, then it's only going to work for.
And I think that's your flash in the pan stuff. I think that's those people that rise to glory for a short amount of time, but can't carry it over the long haul because their base, their foundation, the substance of what they do is not there. It's not relevant, like I said, over the long haul. It's only that neat.
If you were
new
teaching
thing.
only jungle training stuff in the Vietnam era when it came to Iraq, Afghanistan stuff, well, that wouldn't transfer over.
Right.
You know?
You'd have been the hottest thing in the world during the Vietnam War.
Right, exactly.
But you would have been completely irrelevant.
So I think that's what keeps you.
When the conflict shifted.
Yeah, I think.
Or just being able to adapt to any situation, like, you know, if the, depending on where we should be talking civilian side. So,
Sure.
And that's why, to me, it always goes back to just the shooting, because
They're not going to be clearing a room under quad tube nods.
And it doesn't matter what AO they're in, you know, like
You're not going to be wearing that body armor in your house.
Are we operating in the Southcom or the CENTCOM area at this time? Yeah, obviously that's not what a civilian shooter is looking at. But what a civilian shooter is looking at, regardless of how they're going to apply these techniques and these tactics that we teach them, what they're really going down to is, if they have those basics, they can do it in their house, they can do it in their car.
Yeah.
They can do it in a mall. They can defend their home, their people, their self.
Because the guys that are come up with
preservation.
these wazoo methods, when they're proven wrong, well, then they go away. Guys that are teaching the shit that just works all the time.
That's what I said.
They're gonna stay.
They rise to notoriety, or I guess it's notoriety, when you get on those social media forums. But
it's Kardashian.
But they fall for grace.
Yeah.
They fall from grace because their tactics, their techniques, their procedures don't follow. And I keep going back to TTPs because that's kind of our base. But I go back to them because that's the practical application. That's what you look at, is how do we practically apply that in a certain situation or in a broad set of situations. And I think the answer to the question is the people that last over the long haul are the people that build on the basics. And then figure out a way to make that application work across the broader spectrum.
Yeah, and that's a long-term strategy too that I think a lot of the newer guys getting into the training industry just don't understand, is because of social media, like, it resets every day, or reset isn't the best way to describe it, but it progresses every day. There's a 24-hour news cycle.
Who looks the coolest?
Yeah,
and who's the fastest?
So what's the most frustrating thing to see, and it sucks to see it sometimes, is like a guy from our community will realize the power of social media and the trends that make you popular but don't esteem you, and he'll chase that short-term strategy. Like, a guy will be like, bro, I just got sponsored by a holster company. Like, dude, you're a fucking E8 Green Beret Ranger MFFJM. Like, don't sell yourself short because, like, I got, like, 1,000 extra followers on Instagram because I did this thing. Like, you gotta hustle, but, like, look at the long-term picture, dude, because if you're doing something that someone else with no background can replicate, like if you build your entire platform off of, like, I do my cool draw videos or whatever, and all right, in 6 months, someone else is gonna do that, all right? And I think that's why they fade away, is because, they get attracted to just the attention, that they're getting. And it gives you this validation, but it's like, yeah, but who's validating you? Are agencies coming to you and saying, hey, let's do a course? Or is it like, some guy who, maybe has no clue what he's talking about?
Yeah, who are you talking about?
Yeah. Or is Bob Keller coming up to you saying, hey, Brett? I think that's what in any industry defines, who stays there the longest. Now, obviously, that's changed with social media, because I think we've seen that you can recover from scandal.
You can
anything. You can recover from anything.
The phoenix that rises from the ashes. Yeah.
But people pay attention, and they have memories. So.
Well, I think ultimately for the viewers or anyone who's listening to this, it comes down: what are they teaching? Is it actually going to save your life?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's how you gotta look at it. Or, I mean, if you're there for the weekend just to have fun, I mean, then it doesn't matter.
And if you're okay,
right. Which I said, totally okay. Yeah. I don't do that. I don't do any classes like that. But ultimately, if you're going to a class to learn how to save your life, well, that's how you should be looking at how is this instructor teaching? Right. Like, what is he what is he teaching? Does it make sense? Does it work? And is it going to save my life? I would say that's what the relevant shit is.
And I think collectively as a group, we all share that common thought because,
absolutely,
well, we've been taught all our careers that you think tactically, but your outlook is strategic. It's global. So you got to win this fight, but you also got to figure out how does that translate for the rest of the world, for the rest of the time.
Yeah.
It's that long-term goal thinking that you were talking about. And we've all been taught that because that's kind of how we're taught to think, strategic versus tactical. You got to have the tactical because you got to win the fight, but you also got to win the battle of war and inevitably the future. And I think that's really the answer to the question is that defines whether or not an instructor stays relevant and stays popular.
Yeah, is he doing something you could do through enough repetitions, or is he,
through enough situations? Yeah. And everything else, does this apply all the way across the board? And I think that's what makes
But that being said too, I mean, about relevancy, I mean, there are people that just want to have that weekend fun, so that's
and you know what?
Those guys can be relevant too, because if they keep doing the wazoo shit that makes people happy because all they're doing is getting their freaking gun off, I mean, whatever.
And if they self-identify that that's what they're looking for out of the set, they say, "Hey, I'm just here for the shooting."
Well, it's space camp. I had a guy explain this to me. It's like, it's like,
that's another.
But like
example.
some of the coolest shooters I know are guys that recognize they're going to space camp. Like I have a guy that signs up for my classes. He shows up to the class wearing normal clothes, like jeans and a t-shirt. He'll change into all his cool guy gear. After the class, he'll change out of it. He's just like, hey, for me, I'm going to use maybe a part of this if I find myself in the situation, but like, I just like it. It's a hobby, which is a very small percentage of people that are like, no, bro, like, I'm just looking for a reason. Like, really? Like, because that's kind of dangerous. Yeah, like I don't want to be anywhere near you,
It's all about
I got to prove myself.
Not about looking for it.
ISIS hunter. Like, bro, you're 30. You could have joined the army and fought again. Wait, hold on. What? Can you explain this to me?
Are you really an ISIS hunter?
Are you really an ISIS?
Are you a sticker buyer?
All of my opinions are so important that they're expressed in bumper stickers on my gun case.
So, kind of interesting group of questions.
Was that it?
It's funny. So I look at like the questions we've been through, and I look at what we talked about. I almost wonder if taking these questions created as many more questions because based on our responses.
They did.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It actually. Funny thing is it actually caused dialogue amongst us to question some of the questions. I think it's interesting. I think it's unique that the viewers want to look at us and say, hey, tell me what you think about this. I'm sure that this will generate other questions.
Well, I was just say we could go on for another 4 or 5 hours.
I'm sure if we all signed in right now, we could all,
Right now, there's like some Instagram famous person who's like, no, he's wrong. It's the flashy shit that works. Sign up for my class.
But it's awesome. Yeah, man, it's good to see you guys. I appreciate you. Like meeting up and fielding these questions, having a drink and hanging out. It's like I said, I'm sure it'll generate more. We'll probably have to do this again just to answer all the questions created from the questions that we made. Yeah, for sure. But it's I like this kind of dialogue. I think it's good. I think it's healthy, and I think it's interactive. We live in such a new world that things are short term like that. With the Facebook, the Instagram, all of the different kinds of avenues that people could communicate through social media, it's almost instantaneous. So being able to field questions like this and being able to take that feedback direct from the folks that interact with us, I think it's good. I think it's a real good thing.
Very good comments and points from these guys. I've been at this now 26, 27 years being in the gun industry. And it's interesting to watch the instructors that, let's go back 40 years. You had Jeff Cooper with Gunsight. And today, You can think of certain instructors, certain brands, so to speak, certain school names that are still relevant and popular. You know them by their name. And then there's other instructors you don't know by their name today, but 10 years ago, they were relevant. We like to think at Panteo, we have a different perspective, because what we end up seeing is what makes a great instructor doesn't always make that instructor a great marketing person. So I hate to say it, but oftentimes an instructor could be really good at what they do and probably one of the best out there at teaching you to be a better shooter, but their marketing abilities suck, so no one knows who the hell they are. I mean, think about that. If you're not on Instagram and you're not on Facebook and you're not on YouTube, you get these social media Twinkies out there today with no backgrounds, with thousands of followers and people kissing their ass, where in reality you have solid instructors that have been out there for years teaching really good stuff, but people don't know who they are because they lack in their social media skills. And it's a pretty fucked up state of affairs. But anyway, that wraps up the first episode of a series of episodes of Inside Story, where we sit down with our instructors from specific backgrounds and talk about stuff that is relevant to what's going on today. The next episode of Inside Story is The Blue Line. We sit down with 3 instructors with law enforcement backgrounds and get their perspective on what's going on in the industry and questions that are posed to them. We're going to sit down with Dave Spalding, Wes Doss, and Richard Nance. You need to check that out. Thank you for listening to the Make Ready with the Experts podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Visit us at makeready.tv and check out our online library of training content you can't get anywhere else. If you liked this episode, please be sure to subscribe, share, and give us a review. We would appreciate your feedback.